of accessing premium content. Then, of course, there's the question of IPR licensing, how to get the required license, etc. And then there's the windowing system, where, in fact, the AVMS directive says that it should be settled by agreement between the right holder, so that the owner of the rights on the film, on the premium on the film, and they should say on which window of exploitation the film should be made available once it's shown in cinemas. So for a VOD service, of course, it's important that window should be fairly close to the one of traditional, well, it should be as closest as possible as the release, for example. But that's not at all settled in EU legislation, and is settled at national level, sometimes in the law, sometimes in agreements between the various parties. Another untouched area of EU legislation is public service broadcasting, and how they can be present on new delivery platforms. This is a matter, I have to go to the next slide, this is a matter for national legislators to decide, because this business of public service broadcasting is very much something that's for member states to decide. And often there's legislation to say, oh, well, it is within your public service, or it is your public service obligation to be present on all these new delivery platforms. And then there's another facet of this is to which extent can public service broadcasters develop new innovative services? But the question there is can they use public money? Can they use the license fee to do that? And the intervention at EU level is just under state aid scrutiny. So again, a big power for member states to decide these big questions. And one of the big issues at the moment is to know whether national member states may have to set up an ex-ante test to screen these new services that are going to be developed, that are being developed by public service broadcasters, to see if public money can be involved. So, of course, the content of public service broadcasters is often very key in the development of these new services. We're talking about cultural diversity, etc., and Greek content. Well, of course, it's key. I mean, the content of public service broadcasters is absolutely key. So, again, an area that's, I would say, untouched by EU legislation, apart from under state aid scrutiny. Another area that I think is relatively untouched is in the relationship between television platform operators and subscribers and set-top boxes. Again, there's relatively nothing, well, actually, there is hardly anything at EU level. And again, this is an area where the subscriber is key. Once you get a subscriber for television platform operators, you want to keep him. You want to make sure that he's in a long-term relationship and has got a nice set-top box that he's either bought or for a lot of money, or that he's renting, and it will be difficult for him to switch. So that's an area as well that is relatively untouched. So now I'm just going to finish by giving examples of two services that are under development at the moment and what regulators have done to foster these new services. Now, the case of mobile television, everybody's been speaking about television for a long, long time now, but it's a good example for us in regulation, because you've got, all the value chain, first of all, is very long. So you've got the content provider, the multiplex operator, the transmission network operator, the end user access, and the billing question. So it's all there. And so what have regulators done? Also, what's interesting is that you need spectrum, and it's a wireless service, so it's got true cross-border potential, and with the differences of approach between EU regulation on content regulation on one side, with an internal market approach, and the very national-based system of electronic communications, it's interesting. So, well, the Commission is of course trying very, very hard to foster the development of mobile television over digital terrestrial networks, and has adopted 2 communications, has added DVB-H to the list of standards that's got to be promoted at national level. But unfortunately, from where I'm sitting, it really does only cover electronic communications aspects. And it does say at one stage, well, please regulators, why don't you try and have an integrated approach? But when you read the actual communications, there's very little about the content side. So that's a bit of a shame. So and then the national approach, well, you can but only say that launch has been delayed. And I think it's probably been delayed because of the regulatory, in part because of the regulatory difficulties. And here I've just put on the slide the various different approaches that you can see at national level. In some countries, like in France, this is really typical. The emphasis has been more on trying to make sure that the right content is available on the mobile television platform. For reasons of pluralism, they're perfectly laudable reasons. I'm not criticising them. I'm just pointing out the differences of approach, and that's a very sharp contrast with Finland, where the main objective was to make sure that there's a transmission operator there that can transmit the mobile television service. And in fact, I think it's Digita is prevented from actually being involved in the content or the retail side. So he's just a transmission operator. And there, in fact, well, you can't really say there's a mobile TV service that's launched in Finland. But what you can say is that subscribers that have got, well, customers that have got a compatible DVB-H handset, they can receive free-to-air television. So, I mean, it's there. Of course, at the moment, there's no payment, but it's still there. And then in Austria and Germany, it's what's called this integrated model, where all the operators of the value chain have got to get together and agree on who's going to be the transmission operator, who's going to provide the content, how is it going to be retailed before an actual authorizations are given. And in Austria, there is mobile TV. In Germany, there's no mobile TV. Then the last example is HD TV, which is a very similar case study than mobile TV. And what we see in the member states is that HD TV is more and more available on satellite, IPTV and cable. The difficulty is to make sure that it's available on DTT. Again, because of the spectrum problem, there's not enough spectrum in some of the member states. And so, of course, for HDTV, added difficulty is that you need a compatible, not only television, but also set-top box. So there's also the switching cost for customers that want to go from single definition to HD television. Here, contrary to mobile TV, there's been no Commission intervention. Again, same thing, very different stages of development. But what you can see is that the launch does require very strong intervention of the regulator. And in France, 5 HD channels are now available on DTT, and they were again selected by the broadcasting regulator. So the same sort of approach as for the mobile TV, with a call for tender, etc., and who should be present on the network for HD TV. Finland, Italy, UK launch will be soon, and there's no plans in these countries, the last countries that I've explained. I just want to go to explain how it happened in the UK. There was no spectrum available, but Ofcom decided to clear one multiplex of its existing services to upgrade it to MPEG-4 and DVB-T2. It selected the channels that were going to be present on the multiplex, and there's now plans to allocate the spectrum that's needed. So hopefully it should be available before switch-off. But you see the regulatory intervention that was needed to foster that. So that's in a nutshell. I think it's the last slide. So I just wanted to explain that basically the EU regulatory framework is separated. There are areas that are not in it. It gives member states an important power to regulate new areas, and that's it, really. Okay.